The dust on Kepler 442b had not moved for 10,000 years. The dead planet spun slowly around its dying star, cold and empty. Nothing lived here anymore. The rocks told stories of a great civilization that once built cities reaching toward the sky. Now only ruins remained. Dr. Kithara walked carefully through the broken stones. Her 4 legs moved with care over the sharp rocks. The air tasted of metal and death through her breathing mask. Behind her, the dig team worked with quiet tools, searching for anything the ancient people might have left behind. "Doctor, you need to see this," called out Brentok, one of her assistants. His voice cracked with excitement through the radio. Kithara hurried to where Brentok stood. He pointed at a hole in the ground where their digging machines had been working. The hole went deep into the planet, much deeper than they had expected to find anything useful. "The scanners show something big down there," Brentok said. "Something made of metal, very old metal." Kithara looked at her scanner. The readings showed a massive structure buried far below the surface. It was huge, bigger than any building they had found on this dead world. The metal was unlike anything in there. "Databases. Get the heavy diggers," she ordered. "We're going down." It took 3 days to reach the metal structure. When they finally broke through, they found themselves standing in a vast underground chamber. The walls curved high above their heads, covered in strange writing that glowed with a soft blue light. The air inside was clean and fresh, as if the room had been sealed yesterday instead of thousands of years ago. "By the 7 stars," whispered Brentok. "It's a data vault." Kithara had seen many ancient ruins in her years as an archaeologist, but nothing like this. The chamber stretched away into darkness, filled with tall metal towers that hummed with quiet energy. Each tower had screens and controls that still worked after all these centuries. "How is this still running?" asked Jendar, another team member. "The power readings are off the charts." "The builders were advanced," Kithara said. "Much more advanced than we thought." She approached the nearest tower and placed her hand on a control panel. The screen lit up with symbols and pictures. The writing looked familiar, but different from the other ruins they had found. This was older, much older. "Doctor," called Brentok from across the chamber. "You need to see this tower. The symbols here. They're in 17 different languages." Kithara hurried over. The screen showed the same message written over and over in different scripts. Some of the languages she recognized from other ancient sites. Others were completely unknown. But one thing was clear. This was important enough that the builders wanted to make sure someone could read it. "Can you translate any of it?" she asked. Brentok worked at his portable computer, comparing the symbols to their language databases. "Parts of it, yes. The 3rd script here is Old Zintari. It says something about ... a warning? And coordinates. To a star system." "Which system? Let me check." Brentok's fingers moved quickly over his computer. That's strange. It's a small system on the edge of the galaxy. Nothing important there, according to our star charts. Just a yellow star, with a few rocky planets." Kithara felt a chill run down her spine. "What else does it say?" "Warning ... forbidden zone. Extinction class ... Brentok looked up from his computer with worried eyes. "Doctor, I think this is about the inhabitants of the 3rd planet in that system." More team members gathered around as Brentok continued translating. Each language told the same story with small differences, but the message was always the same. The 3rd planet in the distant star system was marked as dangerous. Very dangerous. "Here's a longer section in Old Coloran," Brentok said. "It talks about a species called humans. The builders say they studied these humans for many years. They describe them as..." The translation is difficult. "Berserker species, or maybe endless war makers. What does that mean? Asked Jendar. Kithara was already moving to another tower, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. Help me access more of these records. If the builders left warnings about a specific species, we need to know why. They worked through the day and into the night, translating what they could and recording everything else. The picture that emerged made Kithara's skin crawl with fear. The humans, according to the ancient records, were unlike any other species the builders had encountered. They did not have the strongest bodies or the biggest brains. They were not the fastest or the most advanced, but they had something that made them incredibly dangerous. Listen to this, Rentok said, reading from a translation. They do not surrender when beaten. They do not break when hurt. Instead, they learn from pain and become stronger. They remember every wound and plan their revenge for generations. Another section described human warfare. The builders had watched these humans fight among themselves for thousands of years. They noted how humans would destroy their own cities rather than surrender them to enemies. They would sacrifice themselves to save others. Most frightening of all, they would learn from every defeat and come back stronger. The builders tried to make contact, Kithara read from another screen. They sent peaceful ships to the human world. The humans destroyed them without warning or negotiation. When the builders sent warships to force contact, the humans studied the wreckage and built better weapons. The final entries in the database told a story that made Kithara's blood run cold. The builders, one of the most advanced civilizations in galactic history, had decided that humans were too dangerous to contact. Instead, they had marked the human star system as a forbidden zone and built a network of warning beacons around it. The last entry here, Rentuk said quietly. It's marked as urgent priority. Listen, final warning to any who find these records. The humans of Sol 3 must remain isolated. They are evolution's perfect warriors. If they ever leave their world and spread among the stars, they will not stop until all other species bow to them or are destroyed. We have seen their potential. We choose exile over extinction. Kithara stared at the screen. The coordinates in the warning pointed to a star system that the Galactic Empire had been planning to explore. According to the latest survey reports, the system showed signs of industrial activity on several planets. The Empire's expansion plans included that entire region of space. Doctor, Jendar said nervously, shouldn't we report this to the Empire immediately? If there's a dangerous species out there. Yes, Kithara said, but her voice was troubled. Yes, we should. But even as she spoke, she wondered if anyone would listen. The Galactic Empire was proud and strong. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and absorbed dozens of species into their civilization. The idea that some primitive species on a distant world could threaten the Empire would sound like madness to the Imperial Council Dot as they packed up their equipment and prepared to leave the dead world. Kithara took one last look at the warning. Screens. The ancient builders had been wise and powerful, but they had chosen to run from the humans rather than face them. The Empire, she feared, would not be so wise. The data vault sealed itself as they left, the ancient lights dimming back to their eternal watch. But the warning was now in Imperial hands, and Kithara knew that the course of galactic history might depend on whether anyone would heed the words of a long-dead civilization not far away. In a small yellow star system, the humans continued their daily lives, unaware that their ancient reputation had finally caught up with them. Admiral Zex-High stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Eternal Glory. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see the yellow star that the ancient warnings had spoken about. Around him, the ships of the 47th Subjugation. Fleet spread out in perfect formation. 300 vessels, from massive battleships to swift fighters, all ready to bring another world into the Empire's embrace. Long-range scans are coming in, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, Commander Veltar. The system is much more active than we expected. Zex-High walked to the scanning station and studied the readings. His confidence faltered slightly as he saw what the sensors were showing him. The third planet, which should have been the only inhabited world, was indeed populated. But so was the fourth planet, and there were signs of activity throughout the asteroid belt. Even the gas giants' moons showed signs of civilization. "How many of them are there?" he asked. "Difficult to determine, sir. The signatures suggest millions of individual craft moving throughout the system. Some appear to be military vessels, but most seem to be civilian transports and industrial ships. They've spread throughout their entire star system," Zex-High muttered. This was unexpected. Most species remained on their home world until they developed faster-than-light travel. These humans seemed to have colonized their local space using only primitive rocket technology. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the third planet. Multiple sources, actually. They seem to have many different governments. Put the strongest signal on screen." The viewing screen showed a human face. Yizhai had read the files about human appearance, but seeing one in person was still strange. The creature had only 2 eyes, set in a flat face covered with soft skin. No scales, no natural armor, no obvious weapons. They looked almost fragile. Human on the screen spoke in its own language, then switched to broken galactic standard. "Unknown vessels, this is Earth Defense Command. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose in our system." Zex-High smiled. At least they were trying to be diplomatic. "Prepare the standard first contact message," he ordered. The message was simple and had been used on hundreds of worlds. The Galactic Empire came in peace. They offered trade, technology, and protection in exchange for loyalty and resources. Most primitive species were so amazed by Imperial technology that they surrendered immediately. "Broadcast the message," Zex-High commanded. The humans' response came back within minutes, and it was not what they expected. "We have reviewed your offer," the human spokesperson said. "Earth and her colonies decline to join your empire. We ask that you leave our system immediately." Zex-High blinked in surprise. "They're refusing? Do they understand what they're turning down?" "Perhaps they need a demonstration," suggested Commander Veltar. "Standard procedure calls for a show of force if diplomatic overtures fail." Zex-High nodded. "Very well. Target one of their asteroid mining stations. Destroy it with minimum force. That should convince them we're serious." The forward guns of the Eternal Glory powered up and fired a single blast at a small mining station in the asteroid belt. The beam of energy crossed space in seconds and struck the station dead center. The explosion was visible even from their position near the edge of the system. "That should make our point clear," Zex-High said with satisfaction. The response came, not from Earth, but from a gruff voice speaking perfect galactic standard. "Imperial ships, this is Sarah Chun aboard the mining vessel Lucky Strike. You just killed 300 civilians who are doing nothing but digging rocks. That was a mistake." Before anyone on the Imperial bridge could respond, the Lucky Strike opened fire. The beam that struck the Eternal Glory was unlike anything in Zex-High's experience. It wasn't a military weapon, but a mining laser designed to cut through solid rock. Somehow, the humans had amplified it far beyond its normal power. The blast tore through the dreadnought's shields as if they weren't there, and cut a deep gouge in the armor plating. "Impossible!" Veltar shouted. "How did a mining ship penetrate our shields?" "All ships, battle formation," Zex-High commanded. "Destroy that vessel." But the Lucky Strike was already moving, diving behind a large asteroid. Other human ships began appearing from hiding places throughout the belt. Most of them looked like civilian vessels, but they all carried weapons. More importantly, they all seemed to know exactly where to hit Imperial ships to cause maximum damage. "Admiral," the tactical officer called out, "we're detecting weapon signatures throughout the system. They've turned everything into a weapon. Cargo ships, mining vessels, even passenger transports." The battle that followed was unlike anything in Imperial military history. The humans didn't fight like a proper military force. They had no formal battle lines, no clear command structure, no standard tactics. Instead, they fought like angry insects, swarming from every direction at once. A human cargo ship, damaged and venting atmosphere, rammed itself into an Imperial cruiser rather than surrender. The explosion took out both vessels. Fighter squadrons emerged from behind the gas giant, using the planet's gravity to slingshot themselves into attack runs at impossible speeds. Mining platforms throughout the asteroid belt revealed hidden missile launchers and began bombarding Imperial ships with converted industrial explosives. "They're using their infrastructure as weapons," Veltar reported in disbelief. "Everything in this system has been turned into a potential threat." The humans' knowledge of their local space gave them an enormous advantage. They knew every asteroid, every gravity well, every hiding place. Imperial ships found themselves ambushed from directions they hadn't even considered possible. But what truly unnerved HFY was the humans' attitude. Every Imperial transmission offering surrender was answered with defiance. When captured, human crews would destroy their own ships rather than let Imperial forces examine their technology. When outnumbered, human fighters would deliberately ram Imperial vessels. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're intercepting human communications throughout the system. They're calling this the Second Independence Day and asking all civilians to join the fight." "Civilians?" HFY asked. "Yes, sir. Apparently they have a holiday celebrating their freedom from previous conquerors. They're treating this as another war for independence." The tide of battle began to turn against the Imperial fleet as more and more civilian vessels joined the fight. A luxury cruise ship carrying tourists to Mars dunked its passengers at a space station and returned to battle with improvised weapons. Medical ships began evacuating wounded from both sides, but only to treat them and send them back into battle. Most disturbing of all was how quickly the humans learned. In the first hour of fighting, Imperial plasma weapons had easily destroyed human ships. By the third hour, human vessels were carrying reflective armor that deflected the beams. By the sixth hour, they had somehow reverse-engineered the plasma technology and were using it against Imperial forces. "Admiral," Veltar said quietly, "we've lost 60% of our ships. The humans are adapting faster than we can counter them. I recommend withdrawal." HFY stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed destroyed Imperial vessels scattered throughout the system. The humans had paid a terrible price as well, but they kept fighting with an intensity that bordered on madness. "Signal the retreat," he said finally, as the surviving Imperial ships limped away from the Sol system. A final transmission reached them from Earth. It was the same gruff voice from the mining ship, Sarah Chun. "Tell your Emperor what you learned here today," she said. "Tell him that Earth remembers every attack, every threat, every friend we've lost. Tell him that if he sends more ships, we'll be ready. We'll always be ready." The 47th Subjugation Fleet had been reduced to barely 100 ships. As they jumped to hyperspace, HFY couldn't shake the feeling that they had just awakened something terrible. The ancient warnings had been right. The humans were not like other species. They did not surrender. They did not break. And now they knew that they were not alone in the galaxy. That word of the defeat spread quickly through Imperial space. For the first time in the Empire's history, a single world had repelled a subjugation fleet. The implications sent shockwaves through the Imperial military command. Emperor Vaktos, received the news in his throne room on the capital world. His advisors assured him that the defeat was a fluke, a combination of poor planning and bad luck. One primitive world could not stand against the full might of the Galactic Empire. But in the depths of the Imperial archives, Dr. Kithara read Admiral Zexhi's battle report and compared it to the ancient warnings. Everything the precursors had written was coming true. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. They had adapted to Imperial technology in hours rather than years. Most importantly, they had shown that they would rather die than surrender. The Empire was about to learn what the ancient builders had discovered thousands of years ago. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous, and they had just announced their presence to the galaxy. Emperor Vaktos stood before the massive holographic display in the Imperial War Room. The image showed the Sol System, now highlighted in angry red on the galactic map. Around him, his top military commanders argued in loud voices about what had gone wrong with the 47th Fleet. It was bad planning, insisted General Karthik. Admiral Zexhi underestimated their numbers. We should have sent more ships. The humans got lucky, added Fleet Marshal Dexron. They had home field advantage and fighting in an asteroid belt. In open space, they would be helpless. Emperor Vaktos listened to their excuses with growing anger. The Galactic Empire had never failed to conquer a single world. Never. His empire spanned half the galaxy, controlling over 8,000 star systems. Millions of species served under imperial rule. The idea that one primitive world could resist them was insulting. Enough, he said quietly, and the room fell silent. Admiral Zexhi was a competent officer with 300 ships. The humans destroyed 200 of them. This was not luck or poor planning. This was failure. He turned to face his commanders. I want to know everything about these humans. Their technology, their military capabilities, their weaknesses. And then I want them crushed. Sir, spoke up Intelligence Director Morville. We're already working on it. Our analysis of the battle footage shows that human technology is actually quite primitive. Most of their weapons are modified industrial equipment. Their ships use chemical rockets instead of proper ion drives. They shouldn't have been able to hurt us at all. But they did hurt us, the Emperor said coldly. Why? Morville hesitated. They single quotes creative, sir. They used their equipment in ways we never expected. A mining laser became a warship gun. A cargo container became a bomb. They think differently than we do. Then we adapt, Emperor Vaktos declared. Prepare the Grand Armada. I want 12 full battle fleets. Planet killers, siege engines, the works. We will turn their entire star system into a graveyard. As news of the coming assault spread through Imperial space, something unexpected happened in the Sol System. Humanity united. For the first time in their species' history, every nation on Earth put aside their differences. Old enemies became allies overnight. Religious conflicts were forgotten. Political disputes were set aside. The attack had given humanity something they had never truly had before, a common enemy that threatened their entire species. Sarah Chun, the mining ship captain who had bloodied the Empire's nose, found herself promoted to Supreme Commander of Solar Defense. She stood in the hastily built command center on Luna, looking out at a transformed solar system. Report, she said to her aide, Pearl Martinez. Orbital construction is ahead of schedule, Martinez replied. We've built 43 new shipyards. Around Earth alone. Mars production facilities are running at full capacity. The asteroid belt miners have converted 60% of their operations to weapons manufacturing. Sarah nodded, but her face remained grim. And the population? Every nation has implemented full military conscription. We're training 50 million new soldiers, pilots, and technicians. The corporate research divisions are sharing all their technology freely. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and all the private space companies are working together. Through the window, Sarah could see the results of humanity's transformation. Where once there had been a handful of space stations, now massive orbital fortresses, bristled with weapons. The asteroid belt, previously home to scattered mining operations, had become a vast network of hidden military bases. Even the outer planets now hosted defensive installations. "What about the new ships?" Sarah asked. "Better than we hoped," Martinez said with a small smile. "The engineers have been studying the wreckage from the Imperial fleet. We've reverse-engineered their shield technology and improved it. Our new plasma cannons are actually more powerful than the Imperial versions." "How much more powerful?" 30% increase in energy output, and they fire twice as fast. Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to learn and adapt. Every Imperial weapon they captured became the basis for something better. Every tactical mistake the Empire made was studied and countered, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. The reports from deep space scouts were terrifying. The Empire wasn't sending another subjugation fleet. They were sending an armada large enough to conquer entire sectors of the galaxy. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Kim from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Alpha Centauri. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was tight with fear. "Command, this is Monitor Station 7. We have visual confirmation of the Imperial force. 12 battle fleets, just like intelligence predicted. They're huge, Commander. I count over 5,000 heavy warships. They have ships bigger than our largest space stations." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 5,000 ships. The largest human fleet they could assemble numbered less than 800 vessels, and most of those were converted civilian craft. "Time to arrival?" she asked. 18 days at their current speed." "Acknowledged. Continue monitoring and fall back to the secondary observation post." As the communication ended, Sarah looked around the command center. Every person there knew the odds they faced. Mathematics was against them. Logic was against them. But there was something in their eyes that had nothing to do with mathematics or logic. Determination. "Colonel Martinez," Sarah said, "initiate Operation Lighthouse." Martinez nodded and began entering codes into his console. Throughout the solar system, hidden transmitters began broadcasting a message toward every corner of the galaxy. The message was simple, recorded in dozens of languages by human diplomats, scientists, and ordinary citizens. "This is Earth, calling all free peoples of the galaxy. The Galactic Empire is coming to destroy us because we refuse to surrender our freedom. We know we cannot win this fight alone, but we will fight anyway, because freedom is worth dying for. If there are others out there who dream of liberty, who refuse to bow to tyrants, then know that you are not alone. Earth remembers. Earth endures. Earth will never surrender." The message would take years to reach the distant parts of the galaxy, but Sarah hoped that somewhere, someone would hear it and remember that resistance was possible. In the following days, humanity threw everything they had into their preparations. Children too young to fight helped in the factories. Elderly citizens who remembered old wars shared their knowledge with young soldiers. Artists and writers created propaganda that reminded everyone what they were fighting for. The most important work happened in the research laboratories. Human scientists worked around the clock to understand Imperial technology. They didn't just copy it, they improved it. Imperial plasma rifles became human plasma cannons with better range and power. Imperial shield generators became human, defensive arrays that could protect entire space stations. But the most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a historian studying the captured Imperial database, discovered something that changed everything. "Commander Chun," she said during a briefing, "I've been analyzing the Imperial military doctrine. They're incredibly advanced, but they have a weakness." "What kind of weakness?" "They're conservative. Their tactics haven't changed in over 1,000 years. They rely on overwhelming force and superior technology. They expect their enemies to fight conventionally, using established military doctrine." Sarah leaned forward. "And we don't fight conventionally." "Exactly. Every battle in their database follows the same pattern. They establish battle lines, exchange fire at long range, then close for the decisive engagement. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to follow the rules of warfare." "Then we won't follow the rules," Sarah said with a cold smile. As the Imperial Grand Armada approached the Sol system, they expected to find a primitive civilization cowering behind whatever defenses they could build. Instead, they found something that would haunt Imperial nightmares for generations to come. They found humanity at war. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Imperial scouts reached the edge of the system. Instead of the handful of defensive platforms they expected, they found thousands of hidden weapons scattered throughout the outer asteroid belts. Each one was small, almost invisible to long-range sensors, but together they formed a network of defensive fire that could target anything approaching the inner system. "Admiral," reported the lead scout, "the entire system has been militarized. They've turned every asteroid, every space station, every piece of debris into a potential weapon." Admiral Vekmer, commander of the Grand Armada, studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The humans had done more than just build defenses. They had turned their entire star system into a trap. "How many weapons are we looking at?" he asked. "Impossible to determine precisely, sir. Conservative estimate? 50,000 individual firing platforms. But most of them appear to be small, probably automated." "Then we overwhelm them with numbers," Vekmer decided. "Signal the fleet. Begin the assault." But as 5,000 Imperial warships entered the Sol system, they discovered that humanity had learned from their first encounter. The Second Battle of Sol began at 0600 Universal, time on a Tuesday that would be remembered as the bloodiest day in galactic history. Admiral Vekmer watched from the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Imperial Wrath, as his armada spread across the solar system. 5,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled, moved toward Earth with deadly purpose. This time there would be no mistakes, no surprises, no mercy. Long-range sensors show massive defensive networks throughout the system, reported his tactical officer. "The humans have been busy since our last visit." Vekmer studied the readings. The asteroid belt now bristled with weapons platforms. The space around Earth swarmed with defensive stations. Even the outer planets showed signs of military installations. But numbers were numbers, and the Empire had overwhelming superiority. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Destroy everything." The first wave of Imperial fire lit up space like a new star. Thousands of plasma cannons and particle beams reached across the void toward human positions. The humans responded immediately, and Vekmer was surprised by the intensity of their return fire. "Sir," called out his weapons officer, "their defensive fire is much heavier than expected, and more accurate." On the tactical display, red indicators showed Imperial ships taking damage. Not critical damage, but more than they should have received, from primitive human weapons. Something had changed since the first battle. "Analyze their weapons signatures," Vekmer commanded. The answer came back quickly and disturbed him. "Sir, they're using our own technology against us." Those plasma cannons are based on Imperial designs, but they've been modified. They're actually more powerful than our standard weapons. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. But the energy output readings are 30% higher than our baseline. As the battle continued, Vecmer began to understand what the humans had done. They hadn't just repaired the damage from the first battle. They had studied every piece of Imperial technology they could find and made it better. Human engineers had taken Imperial designs and improved them with typical human creativity. But raw firepower wasn't the humans' only advantage. They fought with a tactical flexibility that confused Imperial commanders. Human ships would pretend to retreat, then turn and attack from unexpected angles. Damaged vessels would ram Imperial ships rather than surrender. Most disturbing of all, human forces seemed to have no fear of death. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we're intercepting human transmissions. They're calling this the final battle and broadcasting messages to their families. Many of them are saying goodbye. They know they're going to die?" "Yes, sir, but they're fighting anyway." The human defensive strategy became clear as the battle progressed. They weren't trying to win through superior force. Instead, they were making the Empire pay the highest possible price for every meter of space. Hidden weapons platforms in the asteroid belt would fire once and then explode, taking nearby Imperial ships with them. Human fighters would damage Imperial vessels and then detonate their own ships to cause maximum destruction. But what truly terrified Imperial forces was the human psychological warfare. They broadcast the screams of dying Imperial crews over open channels. They showed footage of previous Imperial atrocities on conquered worlds. Most effective of all, they broadcast messages from other species in the Empire, calling for rebellion against Imperial rule. "Sir," the intelligence officer reported nervously, "the humans are trying to turn our own people against us. They're broadcasting on frequencies used by subjugated species throughout the Empire." "What are they saying?" "They're telling them that resistance is possible, that the Empire can be defeated. They're using our assault on Earth as proof that Imperial forces can be destroyed." Vecmer realized the humans weren't just fighting for their own survival. They were trying to inspire rebellion throughout the galaxy. Earth's defiance was becoming a symbol that could destroy the Empire's ability to control its vast territories. The battle raged for 14 days. Both sides took terrible losses, but the humans' willingness to sacrifice everything slowly wore down Imperial morale. Ships that should have been victories became Pyrrhic gains as human crews fought to the last breath. On the 10th day, something unprecedented happened. The crew of the Imperial cruiser Endless Victory mutinied rather than continue the assault. They had watched too many human ships die fighting for their freedom, and it reminded them of their own lost homeworld. "Sir," reported the fleet intelligence officer, "we have reports of unrest on 17 ships. Some crews are questioning the purpose of this battle." "The purpose is victory," Vecmer said coldly. "But sir, the humans have no strategic value. They're not threatening our territory or our people. We're killing millions to conquer a single system." Vecmer stared at his officer in shock. The human propaganda was working even on his own people. "We fight because the Emperor commands it." But doubt had been planted, and it grew with each passing day of brutal warfare. By the 12th day, the human defenses were crumbling. Earth's orbital platforms had been destroyed. The asteroid belt fortifications were silent. Mars burned from orbital bombardment. But the humans still refused to surrender. "Sir," the scanning officer called out, "massive energy buildup from Earth's star. The readings are off the charts." On the main screen, the sun began to brighten. Solar flares erupted from its surface, reaching out toward the inner planets. But these weren't natural solar flares. The energy patterns showed clear signs of artificial manipulation. "They're going to blow up their own star," whispered the tactical officer. "Impossible," Detmer said. "No species would destroy their own sun." But the humans had spent the last 6 months secretly installing massive gravitational manipulators around their star. If they couldn't save Earth, they would make sure the Empire paid the ultimate price for taking it. "All ships, emergency retreat," Detmer ordered, but it was too late for many Imperial vessels. The solar flare, enhanced and directed by human technology, swept across the inner system like a wave of death. Hundreds of Imperial ships were caught in the radiation storm and destroyed instantly. Others were damaged beyond repair. As the surviving Imperial ships limped away from the dying Sol system, they carried with them a final message from humanity. Sarah Chun's voice reached them from the evacuating human fleet. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Solar Defense Force. Earth is lost, but humanity survives. We are leaving our home, but we take with us something more valuable than any planet. We take the knowledge that tyrants can be defeated. We take the promise that freedom will never die. And we take with us every lesson you taught us about war." A grand armada had been reduced to less than 2,000 ships. The Empire had won, but at a cost that shook the foundation of Imperial power. More importantly, the humans had escaped. Scattered refugee fleets disappeared into deep space, carrying with them their technology, their knowledge, and their unbreakable will to resist. Within months, the Empire began to feel the consequences of their victory. Human raiders appeared across hundreds of light years, striking Imperial supply lines and research stations. They fought with captured Imperial technology that had been improved beyond Imperial capabilities. Every attack taught them more about Imperial weaknesses, but the humans didn't just attack military targets. They targeted the Empire's ability to control its subject species. Human agents made contact with rebel groups on conquered worlds, sharing technology and tactical knowledge. The message of Earth's resistance spread like wildfire through Imperial space. On the Imperial capital world, Emperor Vaktos received reports of growing unrest throughout his domain. 17 species had declared independence from the Empire. Dozens of Imperial worlds reported sabotage and rebellion. The humans had turned their defeat into something far more dangerous than a military victory. How many humans escaped? He asked his intelligence chief. "Unknown, sir. Estimates suggest anywhere from 50 million to 200 million people scattered across multiple refugee fleets. Find them. Destroy them. Sir, they're not staying in one place. Intelligence suggests they've adopted a nomadic lifestyle, moving constantly through space. They appear to be establishing hidden bases throughout the outer galaxy." The Emperor slammed his fist on his throne. The humans had done something no other species had ever managed. They had survived the full might of the Imperial military and turned their survival into a weapon against Imperial rule. Dr. Kithara, now the Empire's chief xenologist, presented her final report on human capabilities to the Imperial Council. Her words carried the weight of ancient prophecy. "The precursor warnings were accurate," she said. "Humans are not just another warrior species. They are evolution's response to tyranny. They cannot be conquered because they refuse to stay conquered. They cannot be destroyed because they learn from every attempt to destroy them. Most importantly, they cannot be ignored because they will never stop fighting for their freedom." She paused and looked directly at the Emperor. "We have not defeated humanity, Your Majesty. We have created our own destruction. They are no longer contained to one world. They are loose in the galaxy, and they remember every wound we have inflicted upon them." 20 years had passed since the destruction of Earth, and the galaxy was no longer the same. The Galactic Empire, once master of 10,000 worlds, now controlled less than half its former territory. Rebellion burned across hundreds of stars. systems, and at the center of every uprising were the humans. Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, flagship of the Free Fleet. Her hair had turned gray during the long years of war, and lines of command marked her face. But her eyes still held the same fire that had defied the Empire at Seoul. Around her, the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared for the final assault on Drakmor, the Imperial capital world. 800 ships filled the space around the jump point. But these were not the converted civilian vessels that had defended Earth. These were warships built for one purpose: to end the Empire. "Status report," Sarah commanded. "All fleets are in position," reported Admiral Jackson, formerly a cargo pilot from Mars. "The Centauri Liberation Fleet reports ready. The vegan resistance is standing by. The Alpha Squadron sends word that their former Imperial ships are prepared for battle." Sarah smiled grimly. The Free Fleet wasn't just human anymore. Over the years, they had been joined by dozens of species that had broken free from Imperial rule. Former Imperial officers who had seen the truth. Rebel groups that had spent generations fighting tyranny. Even some Imperial worlds that had declared independence and offered their support. "And our special guests?" Sarah asked. "The former Imperial 23rd Battle Group is in position," Jackson replied. "Admiral Vekmer confirms his ships are ready to fight alongside us." It still seemed impossible. Admiral Vekmer, the same Imperial commander who had destroyed Earth, now fought beside the humans he had once tried to exterminate. The transformation had taken years of careful diplomacy and shared battles against Imperial loyalists, but it proved that even enemies could become allies in the fight for freedom. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from Emperor Vaktos himself. Put him through." The main screen showed the Imperial throne room, and Sarah looked once again at the alien who had ordered the destruction of her homeworld. Emperor Vaktos appeared older and more tired than in the propaganda images, but his eyes still held the arrogance that had doomed his empire. "Commander Chun," he said, and there was almost respect in his voice, "you have fought well. Your species has proven itself worthy of admiration. I offer you one final chance for peace." "I'm listening," Sarah replied. "The Empire will recognize human independence. We will grant you sovereignty over any systems you currently control. We will establish trade relations and mutual defense agreements. All we ask is that you end this war and allow the Empire to exist in peace." Sarah was quiet for a long minute. The offer was generous, more than any rebel force had ever been offered. By the Empire, her advisors waited to see what she would say. "Your Majesty," Sarah finally replied, "you should have offered that 20 years ago, before you destroyed Earth, before you killed billions of innocent people, before you proved that the Empire values power more than life." "Then what do you want?" the Emperor asked. "What we've always wanted: freedom, not just for humans, but for every species, every world, every being that dreams of choosing their own destiny. The Empire as it exists must end. And if I refuse?" Sarah's expression became hard as steel. "Then we'll end it for you." The transmission cut off, and Sarah turned to her fleet commanders. "Signal all ships. Begin the final assault." The Battle of Drakmor was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't just humans fighting the Empire anymore. It was the future fighting the past. Freedom fighting tyranny. Hope fighting despair. The Imperial defenses were massive. Orbital fortresses ringed the capital world, each one armed with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. The Imperial Navy's remaining ships formed defensive lines around their homeworld, fighting with the desperation of cornered animals. But the Free Fleet had advantages that no Imperial planner had anticipated. They fought with technologies stolen and improved from dozens of different species. They used tactics learned from 20 years of guerrilla warfare. Most importantly, they fought with a unity that the Empire had never understood. When human ships were damaged, alien allies moved to protect them. When rebel fighters ran low on ammunition, former Imperial vessels shared their supplies. The Free Fleet wasn't just an alliance of convenience. It was a family forged in the fires of shared struggle. The breakthrough came when the former Imperial ships in the Free Fleet used their knowledge of Imperial defensive codes to disable the orbital fortresses. Admiral Vekmer, fighting to redeem 20 years of guilt, led his ships directly into the heart of the Imperial defense network. "This is Admiral Vekmer to all Imperial vessels," he broadcast on the command frequency. "I have served the Empire for 40 years. I have conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations in the name of Imperial glory. But I have seen what the Empire really is, and I choose to stand with those who fight for freedom rather than those who enslave it." His words, coming from one of the Empire's greatest war heroes, shattered the morale of many Imperial defenders. Ship after ship began to surrender or switch sides. The Empire's greatest weakness had always been its inability to inspire true loyalty, only fearful obedience. The final assault on the Imperial Palace was led by Sarah Chun herself. She walked through corridors that had witnessed the planning of countless genocides, past throne rooms where emperors had decided the fate of entire species. When she finally reached the Imperial throne room, she found Emperor Vaktos waiting for her, alone and unguarded. "You could have been gods," he said bitterly. "With your technology and your ability to unite other species, you could have built an empire greater than mine." "We don't want to be gods," Sarah replied. "We just want to be free." "And what happens? To me? To the Imperial worlds that remain loyal? Will you exterminate us as we tried to exterminate you?" Sarah looked at the defeated emperor for a long moment. She thought of Earth burning, of the billions who had died in the wars that followed, of the friends she had lost in 20 years of fighting. She had every right to demand vengeance. Instead, she offered something the Empire had never understood. "You'll be tried for your crimes," she said, "but fairly, by representatives of all the species you've harmed. If you accept responsibility and work to make amends, you might even live to see the galaxy you helped destroy rebuilt into something better. And the Empire? The Galactic Empire is finished. In its place, we'll build something new. A confederation of free worlds where every species has a voice, where diversity is celebrated instead of crushed, where no one world or species dominates the others." 3 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity Station, watching representatives from hundreds of worlds arrive for the first Galactic Congress. The station orbited a star halfway between what had once been Imperial space and the Free Territories, a symbol of the new galaxy they were building together. The Soul Confederation, as it came to be called, was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still species that preferred isolation to cooperation. But for the first time in galactic history, there was a choice. Worlds could govern themselves, species could develop according to their own values, and freedom was a right rather than a privilege. Dr. Kithara, now the Confederation's chief historical advisor, approached Sarah as she watched the arriving ships. "The ancient warnings spoke of humanity as a threat to galactic civilization," she said. "They were wrong, were they?" Sarah asked. "We did destroy the Empire." "You destroyed tyranny," Kithara corrected. "The Empire was never a true civilization. It was just conquest wearing the mask of order. What you've built here, this confederation of equals, this is real civilization." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. "The hardest part isn't destroying the old system. It's building something better to replace it." Through the viewing window, they could see ships from dozens of different species working together to construct new sections of the station. Former enemies labored side by side, sharing technology and knowledge freely. It was a sight that would have been impossible under Imperial rule. "There's something I want to show you," Kithara said, leading Sarah to a memorial chamber in the heart of the station. The chamber was simple and quiet, with walls covered in the names of all who had died in the wars for freedom. At the center stood a single display case containing a fragment of rock from Earth, saved from the dying world by one of the last evacuation ships. "Why here?" Sarah asked. "Because this is where it all started," Kithara replied, "with a small, blue world that refused to surrender. The precursors were right about one thing. Humanity was dangerous to the existing galactic order. You were evolution's answer to tyranny." Sarah placed her hand on the display case, feeling the weight of awe. The years and all the sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. "Earth is gone," she said quietly, "but Earth's children inherited the stars." Outside the memorial chamber, the work of building a new galaxy continued. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts to resolve, and mistakes to correct. But for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy had hope. The massive ships came from the darkness of space like giant metal beasts. They were longer than Earth's biggest cities and wider than mountains. Their dark hulls blocked out the sun as they moved into position above New York, London, Tokyo, and 50 other major cities around the world. Admiral Sarah Chun stood at the window of the United Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva. She watched the alien ships through the thick glass. Her hands were steady, but her heart was beating fast. She had known this day would come. Earth scientists had been picking up strange signals from deep space for months. Now the owners of those signals were here. The ships had appeared 3 hours ago. They came out of nowhere, moving faster than anything humans had ever built. Earth's defense satellites could not even track them properly. One moment space was empty. The next moment, hundreds of alien vessels filled the sky above every major population center on the planet. Sarah turned away from the window. Behind her, the command center was full of noise and motion. Officers ran between computer stations. Red warning lights flashed on every screen. Radio chatter filled the air as military bases around the world tried to figure out what to do. "Admiral," called Major Rodriguez from his station. "We're getting a transmission from the lead ship over New York. They want to speak with Earth's leaders." Sarah nodded. She had been waiting for this. "Put it through to the main screen." The large display at the front of the room flickered. Then an alien face appeared. It was tall and thin, with pale gray skin and large black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical. A computer was translating its words into English. "I am Overlord Keth of the Galactic Hegemony," the alien said. "You are the species known as humans. Your planet is called Earth. We have come to bring you into our empire." Sarah stepped forward. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun, commander of Earth's defense forces. What do you want from us?" The alien's mouth moved in what might have been a smile, but it looked more like a threat. "We want nothing from you except obedience. Your species has developed space travel. This is not allowed without our permission. You have built ships that can travel faster than light. This technology belongs to the hegemony." Around the command center, officers looked at each other with worry. Earth had indeed developed faster than light travel just 5 years ago. It was humanity's greatest achievement. Now this alien was saying they had no right to it. The galactic hegemony rules over 3,000 star systems. Overlord Keth continued. "We have controlled space travel in this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. When a new species develops this technology, they must join our empire. They must follow our rules." Sarah kept her face calm, but inside she was angry. "And if We refuse? You cannot refuse. No species has ever refused. Those who have tried no longer exist. The transmission cut off. The screen went black. In the silence that followed, Sarah could hear her own breathing. Around her, the command center had gone quiet. Everyone was looking at her, waiting for orders. Major Rodriguez spoke first. Admiral, we're getting reports from around the world. The alien ships are taking positions over every major city. They're not attacking, but they're making it clear they could. Sarah walked to her command chair and sat down. She had spent her whole career preparing for war, but never a war like this. Earth's military was strong, but these aliens had technology that was far beyond anything humans had built. Their ships were bigger and faster than anything in Earth's fleet. Get me the president, she said, and contact the leaders of every major nation. We need an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. As her officers worked to set up the communications, Sarah thought about what she had seen. The alien ships were impressive, but there was something about them that bothered her. They were too confident. They acted like Earth would simply give up without a fight. That told her something important about how they thought. The main screen flickered again. This time it showed the faces of world leaders from around the globe. President Santos of the Americas Union, Chancellor Wei of the Asian Federation Prime, Minister Hassan of the African Alliance, and dozens of others. All of them looked worried. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began, you've all seen the alien ships. They call themselves the Galactic Hegemony. They want us to surrender and join their empire. President Santos spoke first. What are our options? Admiral, can we fight them? Sarah looked at the faces on the screen. These were smart people who had led their nations through many crises. But this was different. This was bigger than anything they had ever faced. In a direct fight, we would lose, she said honestly. Their ships are more advanced than ours. They have weapons we don't understand, but that doesn't mean we're helpless. Chancellor. Wei leaned forward. What do you mean? Sarah had been thinking about this moment for years. Ever since Earth's first faster-than-light ship had left the solar system, she had known that eventually they would meet other species. She had hoped. Those meetings would be peaceful, but she had also prepared for the possibility that they would not be. The aliens think they know everything about us, she said. They think we're just another primitive species that will bow down to their superior technology. But they don't understand humans. They don't understand that we don't give up. Prime. Minister Hassan nodded. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we show them what humans are really capable of, Sarah said. But first, we need to know more about them. We need to understand their technology and find their weaknesses. The screen flickered again. Overlord Keth's face appeared, interrupting the meeting. His black eyes stared out at them with cold intelligence. Leaders of Earth, he said, you have 72 hours to surrender. Send representatives to our flagship to sign the documents of submission. If you refuse, we will demonstrate the power of the hegemony. Your cities will burn. Your species will be enslaved. This is the choice we offer you. The transmission ended. The world leaders looked at each other in silence. 72 hours. 3 days to decide the fate of humanity. Sarah stood up. We need to buy time, she said. I suggest we tell them we're considering their offer. Meanwhile, we prepare for what comes next. President Santos frowned. And what comes next, Admiral? Sarah smiled for the first time since the alien ships had arrived. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been preparing for this fight her whole life. What comes? Next, she said, is that we show these aliens why humans have survived every challenge we've ever faced. We show them that some species cannot be conquered. As the meeting ended and the world leaders began to make their preparations, Sarah looked out the window again at the alien ships. They hung in the sky like metal clouds, blocking out the light, but she was not afraid. She had plans. Plans that the galactic hegemony could never imagine. The countdown had begun. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of. The clock on Admiral Chun's desk showed 18 hours remaining. 18 hours until humanity's deadline with the galactic hegemony. Around the world, people watched the skies with fear. The alien ships had not moved from their positions above. The cities, they waited like metal vultures, ready to strike. But in the depths of Earth's military command centers, something else was happening. Sarah Chun was not preparing to surrender. She was preparing to spring the biggest trap in human history. "Admiral," called Dr. James Okafor from his workstation. The African physicist looked tired. He had not slept in 3 days. "The quantum disruptor network is ready. All devices are in position and waiting for your signal." Sarah nodded. Dr. Okafor was the smartest person she had ever met. 5 years ago, when Earth first developed faster-than-light travel, he had discovered something amazing. The method that most alien species used for space travel had a weakness, a flaw that could be exploited. "How many ships are we tracking?" Sarah asked. Major Rodriguez looked up from his screens. "We count 437 alien vessels in Earth's solar system. They're positioned exactly as we expected. The largest ships are over our major cities. Smaller ships are patrolling the outer edges of the system." Sarah walked to the large tactical display in the center of the command room. It showed the entire solar system with red dots marking each alien ship. For months, Earth's spy satellites had been watching space, learning the patterns of alien movement. The hegemony was powerful, but they were also predictable. "And our people?" Sarah asked. "Ambassador Martinez and his team are aboard the hegemony flagship," Rodriguez reported. "They've been there for 6 hours, pretending to negotiate surrender terms. The aliens think we're stalling for time because we're scared." Sarah smiled grimly. They were stalling for time, but not because they were scared. They were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The plan had taken years to develop. When Earth's first explorers had ventured beyond the solar system, they had done more than just explore. They had been planting seeds, special devices hidden in asteroid fields and on dead planets throughout nearby star systems. Devices that the aliens could not detect because they used technology that was uniquely human. Dr. Okafor had discovered that the hegemony's faster-than-light travel worked by folding space. Their ships created tunnels through space-time that allowed them to travel vast distances instantly. But this method required the space around them to be stable. If that stability was disrupted, their ships would be trapped wherever they were. Humans had developed a different method. Earth ships used quantum tunneling, a technique that was harder to master, but much more flexible. More importantly, it was not affected by the disruptions that would trap hegemony ships. "Admiral," came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a message from Ambassador Martinez aboard the flagship." The main screen flickered, showing the face of Carlos Martinez, Earth's chief diplomat. He was a calm man in his 50s who had spent his career negotiating with difficult people. But even he looked nervous, sitting in an alien ship surrounded by enemies. "Admiral Chun," Martinez said quietly, "I'm transmitting this from a secure location on the ship. The aliens are growing impatient. Overlord Kef wants a final answer within the hour. I don't think I can delay them much longer." Sarah looked at the clock. They still had 17 hours until the deadline, but the aliens were pushing harder. That was actually good news. It meant they were confident of victory. Overconfident enemies made mistakes. "Can you get to the location we discussed?" Sarah asked. Martinez nodded slightly. "Yes, security is lighter than expected. They don't see us as a threat." "Good. Wait for my signal." The transmission ended. Around the command center, officers worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew their role in what was about to happen. They had practiced this scenario dozens of times, but never with real alien ships and real stakes. Sarah walked to Dr. O'Coffer's station. The physicist was staring at a complex display showing energy patterns throughout the solar system. "Are you certain this will work?" she asked quietly. O'Coffer looked up at her. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they were also bright with excitement. "I've run the calculations 1,000 times, Admiral. The quantum disruptors will create interference patterns in local spacetime. Any ship using hegemony-style faster-than-light drives will be unable to jump. They'll be trapped here until we turn the devices off. And our ships will be completely unaffected. Our quantum tunneling drives work on different principles. We'll be the only ones who can move freely." Sarah nodded. It was a beautiful plan, but it depended on perfect timing. If they acted too soon, the aliens might escape. If they waited too long, Earth cities might be destroyed. "Admiral," Rodriguez called out, "we're detecting movement from the alien fleet. The ships over major cities are powering up their weapons." Sarah's blood went cold. Were the aliens about to attack early? She looked at the tactical display and saw energy readings spiking around the hegemony ships. "Are they targeting our cities?" she asked. Rodriguez studied his instruments. "No, ma'am. It looks like a show of force. They're demonstrating their firepower without actually firing." Through the windows of the command center, Sarah could see the alien ship hovering over Geneva. Bright lights were pulsing along its hull. Similar displays were probably happening over every major city on Earth. The aliens were trying to frighten humanity into surrendering. "They're getting nervous," Dr. O'Coffer observed. "This isn't how their conquests usually go. Most species surrender immediately when they see the size of the hegemony fleet." Sarah felt a moment of pride. Humans were different. They didn't give up easily. Even facing impossible odds, they kept fighting. Her secure communication device buzzed. She looked at the message and smiled. It was from deep space, far beyond the solar system. The message contained just 2 words: "Network ready." For 3 years, human ships had been traveling to distant star systems. Officially, they were exploration and trade missions. In reality, they were military operations. Captain Elena Vasquez and dozens of other commanders had been placing quantum disruptor devices throughout hegemony space. The aliens had no idea that humans had been preparing for this war long before the first hegemony ship appeared over Earth. "All stations report status," Sarah called out. Around the command center, officers confirmed their readiness. The quantum disruptor devices in the solar system were charged and ready. Earth's defense fleet was hidden behind the moon, waiting for orders. Most importantly, the network of devices throughout hegemony space was online and ready to activate. Sarah's personal communicator chimed. President Santos appeared on the small screen. "Admiral, the world leaders are asking for an update. The people are getting scared. Those light displays from the alien ships have everyone thinking an attack is coming." "Tell them to hold steady, Madam President," Sarah said. "In 1 hour, everything changes." Santos looked puzzled. "What happens in 1 hour?" Sarah looked around the command center. Her officers were watching her, waiting for the order that would change human history forever. "In 1 hour, we show the galaxy that Earth is not as helpless as it looks." The president's image disappeared. Sarah walked back to the tactical display and studied the positions of the alien ships. They were spread throughout the solar system in a pattern designed to control all possible escape routes. It was a good strategy against a normal enemy. But humans were not normal. "Dr. O'Coffer," she said, "begin the final charging sequence for all quantum disruptors." "Yes, Admiral. All devices will be ready to activate on your command." Sarah took A deep breath. Once she gave the order, there would be no going back. Earth would be committed to a path that would either lead to freedom or destruction. But she had never been more certain of anything in her life. All stations, this is Admiral Chun, she announced. Operation Gatekeeper begins in 30 minutes. Prepare for quantum disruptor activation on my mark. Around the command center, officers confirmed their readiness. On screens throughout the room, energy readings showed the disruptor devices powering up. Soon the galactic hegemony would learn that humans had been planning this moment for years. The trap was set. Now it was time to spring it. The moment had arrived. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center, her hand hovering over the activation switch. Around her, dozens of officers waited in tense silence. On screens throughout the room, alien ships glowed like red dots scattered across the solar system. Admiral, Major Rodriguez reported quietly. Ambassador Martinez confirms he's in position aboard the Hegemony flagship. All our people are ready. Sarah nodded. The plan was simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. For 3 years, human ships had been secretly placing quantum disruptor devices throughout hegemony space. The aliens thought humans were just another primitive species trying to explore the galaxy. They had no idea they were watching the largest military operation in human history. Dr. Okafor, final status on the disruptor network? The physicist looked up from his instruments. His dark skin was shiny with sweat, but his voice was steady. All devices are charged and synchronized, Admiral. The solar system network is ready. The deep space network is ready. On your command, we can activate disruptors in over 400 star systems simultaneously. 400 star systems. Sarah still could barely believe the scale of what they had accomplished. Human ships had traveled farther and faster than anyone had thought possible. They had placed their devices in the heart of hegemony space, right under the aliens' noses. Communications, Sarah called. Open a channel to all Earth Defense Forces. The main screen split to show the faces of military commanders around the world. General Park from the Asian Defense Force, Admiral Thompson from the Atlantic Fleet, Commander Al-Rashid from the African Space Command, and dozens of others. These were the people who would lead humanity through what came next. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began, today we make history. For 10,000 years, the galactic hegemony has ruled through fear and oppression. Today that ends. Operation Gatekeeper is now active. She turned to Dr. Okafor and nodded. The physicist placed his hand on a large red button, activating quantum disruptors in 3.2.1. Now, the button clicked down. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then readings began appearing on screens throughout the command center. Energy patterns shifted. Space-time itself began to change in subtle ways that only the most sensitive instruments could detect. Solar system disruptors are active, Dr. Okafor reported. All alien ships in our system are now trapped. On the tactical display, the red dots representing alien ships suddenly changed color. Warning signals appeared next to each one. The galactic hegemony fleet that had seemed so powerful just moments before was now helpless. Deep space network status? Sarah asked. Dr. Okafor checked his readings. Activation confirmed in 417 star systems. The entire hegemony faster-than-light network is now disrupted. Sarah felt a moment of pure satisfaction. The aliens had come to Earth expecting easy conquest. Instead, they had flown directly into a trap that had taken years to prepare. Their mighty empire was suddenly cut into hundreds of isolated pieces. Admiral, Rodriguez called out urgently. We're receiving transmissions from the alien fleet. They're trying to jump to faster-than-light speed, but their drives aren't working. On the main screen, Sarah could see the alien ship hovering over Geneva. Bright lights were flashing along its hull as the crew tried desperately to activate their escape systems. Similar scenes were playing out above cities around the world. "Admiral Chun," came Ambassador Martinez's voice through the communications system. "I'm aboard the Hegemony flagship. There's chaos up here. Overlord Keth is screaming at his officers. Their navigation systems are showing impossible readings." Sarah activated her personal transmitter. "Ambassador, can you get to the ship's communication center?" "Already there," Martinez replied. "The aliens are so confused they've forgotten about me. I can access their transmission systems." "Perfect. It's time to let the galaxy know what's happening." Sarah walked to the center of the command room. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. The first phase of Operation Gatekeeper was complete. Now came the most important part, telling the galaxy why humanity had done this. "Dr. Okafor, are you certain the Hegemony ships cannot escape?" The physicist nodded confidently. "As long as the quantum disruptors remain active, they're faster than light. Drives are completely useless. They're trapped here until we decide to let them go." Sarah activated the galaxy-wide communication system that Ambassador Martinez had accessed aboard the alien flagship. Her voice would now be broadcast to every Hegemony ship and every planet under their control. "People of the galaxy," she began, "this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the planet Earth. For 10,000 years, you have lived under the rule of the galactic hegemony. You have been told that their empire brings order to the galaxy. You have been told that species who resist them are destroyed. Today, humanity shows you that these things are lies." She paused, looking around the command center. Her officers were watching her with pride. They knew they were part of something historic. "The hegemony came to Earth demanding our surrender," Sarah continued. "They told us we had no choice but to join their empire or be destroyed. We chose a third option. We chose to fight back, not just for ourselves, but for every species that has suffered under hegemony rule." On screens throughout the command center, data flowed in from the quantum disruptor network. Reports were coming in from across hegemony space. Alien military fleets were stranded. Communication networks were failing. The empire that had seemed invincible was falling apart. "As I speak," Sarah said, "the hegemony's faster-than-light network has been completely disrupted. Their fleets cannot move between star systems. Their communication systems are failing. The iron grip they have held over the galaxy for 10,000 years has been broken." Major Rodriguez looked up from his station with excitement. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from across hegemony space. Species that have been enslaved for centuries are beginning to rebel. The Zelani have retaken 3 of their homeworlds. The Vorthic crystalline collectives are declaring independence." Sarah smiled. This was what she had hoped for. The hegemony maintained control through fear and the threat of their powerful fleets. With those fleets trapped and unable to respond to rebellions, oppressed species were finally free to fight back. "To the peoples of the galaxy who have suffered under hegemony rule," Sarah continued her broadcast, "this is your moment. Rise up, reclaim your freedom. Humanity stands with you. We do not seek to replace the hegemony as your rulers. We seek to give you what every species deserves, the right to govern yourselves." Dr. Okafor was monitoring transmissions from across the galaxy. "Admiral, I'm picking up communications from dozens of species. They're coordinating uprisings. The hegemony's regional governors are requesting military support, but there are no ships available to help them." "What about the hegemony core worlds?" Sarah asked. "Cut off just like everywhere else. The quantum disruptors make it impossible for them to coordinate their response. They can't even communicate effectively with their own forces." Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The plan was working even better than she had hoped. By attacking the hegemony's technology, rather than their ships directly, humanity had avoided a bloody war while achieving complete victory. "Admiral," Rodriguez called out, "Overlord Keth is requesting to speak with you directly." Sarah looked at the main screen. "Put him through." The alien's gray face appeared, but he looked very different from before. His black eyes were wide with shock and fear. When he spoke, his voice shook with rage. "What have you done?" he demanded. "How did a primitive species like yours develop this technology?" Sarah stared back at him calmly. "You made a mistake, Overlord. You assumed that because we were newer to space travel, we were less capable than you. You never bothered to study human history. If you had, you would have learned that we've been fighting impossible odds and winning for our entire existence." Keth's mouth moved, but no words came out. Behind him, Sarah could see alien officers running around in panic. "The hegemony is finished," Sarah continued. "Your empire has been cut into pieces. Your oppressed subjects are rising up. Your fleets are trapped. You have two choices: surrender and face justice for your crimes, or remain isolated in your core. Systems forever. You cannot do this," Keth whispered. "The hegemony has ruled for 10,000 years. We brought order to the galaxy." "You brought tyranny," Sarah replied. "Now the galaxy is free to choose its own future." She cut the transmission and turned to her officers. Around the command center, displays showed the collapse of hegemony power across hundreds of star systems. It was the end of an era and the beginning of something new. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah announced, "humanity has just changed the course of galactic history. The age of the hegemony is over. The age of freedom has begun." 3 months had passed since Operation Gatekeeper changed the galaxy forever. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her ship, the UES Liberator, as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Zalani homeworld of Kepler 442b. Through the main viewport, she could see a planet that was green and blue, much like Earth, but with 3 small moons hanging in its sky. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving a welcome message from the Zalani planetary government. They're giving us permission to enter orbit." Elena smiled. 6 months ago, the Zalani had been slaves, forced to work in hegemony bio-research facilities throughout the galaxy. Their homeworld had been occupied by alien troops for over 300 years. Now they were free, and they had asked humanity to help them build a new kind of galactic civilization. "Take us into orbit, Mr. Kim," Elena ordered. "And prepare the diplomatic shuttle. It's time to meet our new allies." Elena was part of the first human diplomatic mission to travel beyond the solar system since the quantum disruptor network had been activated. Her job was to meet with the species that had gained their freedom when the hegemony fell. More importantly, she was here to help them work together to build something better than the empire that had oppressed them. The shuttle bay of the Liberator was busy with activity. Elena's diplomatic team was preparing for their most important mission yet. Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist, was checking her translation equipment. Colonel Martinez, a military advisor, was reviewing security protocols. Most importantly, Ambassador Chun, Admiral Sarah Chun's younger sister, was preparing for negotiations that could shape the future of the galaxy. "Captain Vasquez, Ambassador," Chun said as Elena approached. "Are you ready for this? What we do here today could determine whether the galaxy moves toward peace or falls into chaos." Elena nodded. She had been thinking about that responsibility for weeks. When the hegemony controlled the galaxy, there had been order, but it was the order of a prison. Now there was freedom, but freedom could lead to chaos if the newly liberated species didn't learn to work together. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the Zalani homeworld. Elena looked out the window at landscapes that seemed both familiar and alien. There were forests and oceans like on Earth, but the trees were silver instead of green, and the water had a slight purple tint. Cities dotted the continents, but their architecture was unlike anything humans had ever built. The Zelani constructed their buildings from living materials that grew and changed over time. Incredible, Dr. Kim whispered. The Zelani have mastered biotechnology in ways we never imagined. Their entire civilization is based on working with living systems instead of fighting against them. The shuttle landed in the capital city of Cyrillus. As the doors opened, Helena was struck by the smell of the air. It was clean and fresh, filled with the sense of growing things. The city around them seemed to pulse with life. Buildings twisted upward like enormous trees. Bridges stretched between them like vines. Everything was connected in a vast organic network. Their hosts were waiting for them. The Zelani were tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that were large and golden. Their leader, who introduced herself as growth singer Lirelei, moved with a fluid grace that reminded Elena of dolphins she had seen in Earth's oceans. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Lirelei said in accented but clear English. Her voice had musical qualities, as if she were singing instead of speaking. "We have waited long for this meeting. Your species has given us a gift beyond measure, the gift of freedom." Ambassador Chun stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "We are honored to be here, Growth Singer. Humanity seeks no reward for what we did. We acted because freedom is something all species deserve." Lirelei's golden eyes studied the human delegation carefully. "That is why we trust you. The hegemony conquered through strength and fear. You liberated us and asked for nothing in return. This is why the Zelani wish to join the alliance you are building." As they walked through the city, Elena was amazed by what she saw. The Zelani had rebuilt their civilization in just 3 months. Where the hegemony had built ugly industrial facilities, there were now gardens and parks. Where there had been slave barracks, there were now homes that seemed to grow from the ground itself. "How did you accomplish so much so quickly?" Dr. Kim asked, her scientific curiosity obvious. "Biotechnology," Lirelei explained. "We can grow buildings in days instead of years. We can heal damaged ecosystems in weeks. The hegemony forced us to use our abilities to create weapons and tools for their armies. Now we use them to heal our world and build our future." They arrived at the planetary council chambers, a magnificent building that looked like it had been carved from a single, enormous tree. Inside, Elena saw representatives from dozens of other species. There were the crystalline Vorthik, beings that looked like living gemstones and communicated through flashes of colored light. There were the aquatic Delphians, who wore environmental suits filled with water from their ocean worlds. There were species Elena had never seen before, all gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy. "This is remarkable," Ambassador Chun said quietly to Elena. 3 months ago, these species couldn't even communicate with each other. The hegemony kept them isolated to prevent them from working together. Now look at them. Elena watched as a different species interacted. They were using translation devices developed by combining human, Zelani, and Vorthik technology. The crystalline beings' light flashes were being converted to sound. The Delphians' sonar clicks were being translated into words. Species that had been enemies under hegemony rule were learning to understand each other. Growth Singer Lirelei called the meeting to order. "Friends and allies," she began, "we gather today to discuss the formation of the Free Systems Alliance. For too long, this galaxy was ruled by fear and oppression. Today, we have the chance to build something new, something based on cooperation instead of conquest." A Vorthik representative, its crystalline body flashing with blue and white lights, spoke next. The translation device converted its communication into words. The Vorthic Collective agrees. Our computational abilities were used to run hegemony. War machines. Now we wish to use them to solve problems of peace, prosperity, and exploration. A Delphian in an aquatic environmental suit added its voice. The hegemony strip-mined our ocean worlds for rare minerals. They cared nothing for the life that was destroyed. In the Alliance, we hope to share our knowledge of sustainable resource management. Elena listened as species after species spoke about their hopes for the future. Each one had unique abilities and knowledge that the hegemony had exploited. Now they wanted to share those gifts freely with others. Ambassador Chun stood to address the assembly. Humanity is honored to be part of this gathering. When we first developed faster-than-light travel, we dreamed of meeting other species and learning from them. The hegemony tried to crush that dream. Today, we see it becoming reality, in ways we never imagined. She paused, looking around the chamber at the diverse group of beings. But we must be honest about the challenges ahead. The hegemony still controls their core systems. There are species that benefited from their rule and may try to restore it. There are threats we haven't discovered yet. Building this alliance will not be easy. A new voice spoke up. It belonged to a Corvin, a species of tall reptilian beings from the Outer Rim territories. The human speaks truth. Already, there are reports of hegemony loyalist groups forming in some systems. Some species fear freedom more than they feared oppression. Elena frowned. She had heard similar reports. Not every species was happy about the hegemony's fall. Some had been enforcers for the Empire. Others had simply grown comfortable with being told what to do. Freedom was harder than slavery for those who had forgotten how to make their own choices. Growth Singer Lirale addressed this concern. This is why the Alliance must be more than just a military agreement. We must show the galaxy that cooperation creates better lives than conquest. We must prove that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. Dr. Kim leaned over to Elena and whispered, "They're talking about creating a completely new model of galactic civilization. Not an empire, not a confederation, but something entirely different." The discussion continued for hours. Species after species shared their ideas for how the Alliance should work. The Zalani proposed using biotechnology to terraform damaged worlds. The Vorthic offered to create communication networks that could connect every member species instantly. The Delphians suggested sustainable mining techniques that wouldn't destroy ecosystems. But the most important discussion was about principles. What would the Alliance stand for? How would it make decisions? How would it resolve conflicts between member species? The hegemony ruled through force, Ambassador Chun said. Every decision was made by whoever had the biggest fleet. We cannot repeat that mistake. The alliance must be based on consent and cooperation. A small, furry species called the Micklin raised a concern. But what if some members disagree on important issues? What if cooperation fails? It was Elena who answered. Then we keep talking until we find a solution. Humanity has learned that the best decisions come from hearing all voices, not just the loudest ones. 6 months after the formation of the Free Systems Alliance, Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of Alliance Station 1, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the massive orbital facility. The station hung in space at the edge of the former hegemony border, a symbol of the new galactic order that had emerged from the ashes of the old empire. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Sarah could see vessels of every imaginable design. Sleek Zalani bioships that looked more like living creatures than machines. Crystalline Vorthic craft that sparkled like flying jewels. Graceful Delphian ships designed to move through water and space with equal ease. And scattered among them, the angular gray vessels of Earth's fleet, no longer the newest or most advanced ships in space, but still respected for what they represented. "Admiral," called Captain Morrison from behind her, "we're receiving a transmission from the hegemony. Core worlds." "It's Overlord Keth again," Sarah sighed. For 6 months, the remnants of the hegemony had been sending increasingly desperate messages. Their empire had collapsed. Their fleets were trapped in their home systems by the quantum disruptor network. Their former subjects had either joined the alliance or declared independence. All they had left were a handful of core worlds and their pride. "Put him through to my office," Sarah said. "I suppose it's time to see what they want now." Sarah's office on Alliance Station 1 reflected the new galactic reality. Her desk was made from Zilani biometal that seemed to flow like liquid but was stronger than steel. Her chairs were crafted by Meeklin artisans who had once been forced to make furniture for hegemony officials. On the walls hung gifts from a dozen species, each representing a world that was now free to choose its own path. The main screen flickered to life, showing Overlord Keth's familiar gray face. But the alien looked different from when Sarah had first seen him 6 months ago. His black eyes were sunken. His skin was pale and drawn. He looked like someone who hadn't slept well in months. "Admiral Chun," Keth began, his voice lacking its former arrogance, "I come to you not as an enemy, but as a petitioner. The hegemony core worlds are dying." Sarah studied the alien carefully. "Explain." "For 10,000 years, our empire was fed by tribute from conquered worlds," Keth continued. "Food, raw materials, manufactured goods, all flowed to the core systems. Now that flow has stopped. Our populations are larger than our worlds can support. We are facing starvation and social collapse." Sarah felt no sympathy for the former overlord, but she was curious about his intentions. "What do you want from me?" "We request permission to send ships to trade with alliance worlds. We have knowledge and technologies that could be valuable. We ask only for the chance to buy food and supplies to keep our people alive." Sarah leaned back in her chair. This was the moment she had been expecting for months. The proud hegemony, which had demanded Earth's surrender less than a year ago, was now begging for help. "You enslaved billions of beings," Sarah said quietly. "You destroyed entire civilizations. You ruled through fear and oppression for 10,000 years. Why should we trust you now?" Keth's eyes closed for a moment. When he opened them again, Sarah saw something she had never expected to see from a hegemony overlord: genuine remorse. "Because we have learned that our way was wrong," he said. "The empire we built was hollow. It depended on taking from others instead of creating value ourselves. When that stopped, we discovered how weak we really were." Sarah considered his words. The Alliance leadership had debated this situation many times. What should they do with the hegemony core worlds? Some species wanted revenge for centuries of oppression. Others, including many humans, believed that mercy was more important than justice. "I cannot make this decision alone," Sarah said finally. "The Alliance Council will have to vote on whether to allow trade with hegemony worlds. But I will present your request fairly." "Thank you," Keth whispered. For the first time since Sarah had met him, the alien seemed genuinely grateful. The transmission ended, and Sarah turned to look out the window again. A new ship was approaching the station, one she recognized immediately. It was the Hughes Liberator, Captain Elena Vasquez's ship, returning from a diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim territories. Not an hour later, Elena sat across from Sarah in her office, sharing a cup of coffee that had become something of a luxury item in space. Coffee beans were one of Earth's most popular trade goods among Alliance species, who found the stimulant effects fascinating. "How did the negotiations go with the Corvin Republic?" Sarah asked. Elena smiled. "Better than expected. They've agreed to join the Alliance as full members. They're contributing their expertise in asteroid mining and deep space navigation. In exchange, they want help rebuilding their shipyards and access to Zelani biotechnology for terraforming their damaged worlds. Sarah nodded approvingly. Corvin had been reluctant to join the Alliance at first. They were a proud species that had maintained some independence even under hegemony rule. But as they saw the benefits of cooperation, they had gradually warmed to the idea. Any word from the Outer Rim about hegemony loyalist groups? Sarah asked. Elena's expression grew more serious. Some. There are still a few systems where local governors are trying to maintain the old order. But without fleet support from the Thee. Core worlds, they're mostly just making noise. Most of their populations are ignoring them and establishing their own governments. And the Free Captain incident? Elena frowned. That's more concerning. There are reports of former hegemony military. Officers forming independent fleets. They're basically becoming pirates, raiding isolated systems and claiming to be the true hegemony. Admiral Torres is organizing a joint task force to deal with them. Sarah made a note to follow up on that issue. The fall of the hegemony had created some chaos along with the freedom. Criminal groups and rogue military units were taking advantage of the transition period to cause trouble. But overall, the galaxy was becoming more peaceful and prosperous than it had been in thousands of years. There's something else, Elena said. I received a message from Earth. The terraforming project on Mars is ahead of schedule thanks to Zelani biotechnology. And the asteroid mining operations are producing more resources than anyone expected, thanks to Corvin techniques. Sarah smiled. Earth was benefiting enormously from Alliance membership, but not in the way the hegemony would have expected. Instead of conquering other worlds and taking their resources, humans were learning from other species and improving their own capabilities. Soft chime indicated an incoming message. Sarah's aide, Lieutenant Park, appeared on the communication screen. Admiral, the Alliance Council is ready to begin the emergency session you requested. They're waiting for you in the main conference chamber. Sarah stood and straightened her uniform. Time to see what the galaxy thinks about helping our former enemies. The Alliance Council chamber was one of the most remarkable rooms Sarah had ever seen. It was designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of different species, each with their own environmental and physical needs. The Delphians sat in water-filled pods. The Vorthic representatives perched on crystalline structures that conducted their light-based communications. The Zelani delegates sat on living chairs that adjusted to their bodies automatically. At the center of the chamber was a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Green sections showed Alliance territory, which now included over 600 star systems. Yellow areas marked independent systems that were friendly to the Alliance. Red zones showed the hegemony core worlds, isolated and cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Friends and allies, Sarah began, addressing the assembly. We face a decision that will define the character of our alliance. The hegemony core worlds are requesting permission to trade with our systems. They claim their populations are facing starvation. A Vorthic representative flashed red lights, which the translation system converted to words. The hegemony showed no mercy to our people when we were starving under their rule. Why should we show mercy to them? Growth singer Lirale of the Zelani spoke next. The desire for revenge is natural, but we must consider what kind of galaxy we want to build. Do we want to be defined by our hatred of the past, or by our hope for the future? A heated debate followed. Some species argued for maintaining the isolation of the hegemony core worlds until they faced complete collapse. Others advocated for immediate humanitarian aid. Still others proposed a middle course of limited trade under strict conditions. Colonel Martinez, representing the human military delegation, stood to speak. I've fought against the hegemony. I've seen what they did to conquered worlds. But I've also learned something from this war, Victory isn't just about defeating your enemies. It's about what you build afterward. Sarah listened to the debate with growing respect for the alliance she had helped create. Under the hegemony, such discussions would have been impossible. Decisions were made by whoever had the most military power. Here, every voice was heard and every perspective was considered. Finally, Ambassador Chun, representing Earth's civilian government, called for a vote. I propose that we allow limited trade with hegemony core worlds, subject to the following conditions. First, they must publicly